We're gonna do some more weird shit with stuff I found in my backyard. Pine needles are sharp.
I just said, yes, man, right away, anything.
Alright, so time for another weird experiment. If you saw my previous pine needle moonshine video, I fermented pine needles to make a spirit. You know, I think it's safe to say, after doing this channel for 8 years, weird experiments are kind of my thing. I still have most of the spirit from that pine needle moonshine video because I wasn't really sure what to do with it. You know, I sat with this for a couple of days after I published that video and you know, just trying to come up with some ideas. And what I finally landed on, I'm sure you guessed from the title, was to try and make some actual gin, or to use the term I came up with in that last video, a pseudo gin. I think I might have invented that term. I haven't actually looked that up to find out if anybody else has coined that phrase. It exists in my brain, and that's all that's important. So, you know, this was interesting, but it wasn't like just packed full of flavor. So my idea is to find out whether or not we can just substitute pine needles instead of juniper berries in a regular gin recipe and find out what happens. So that's what we're gonna do today. And the problem is I don't have enough of the pine needle moonshine. I need something else to add to this so that I can end up with a larger final product, because you know, if you were to hypothetically distill this down to turn it into a gin, you're probably only gonna get about, you know, maybe half of this left in usable product, just between your heads and your tails losses. So what I did is last night I took a jug of whiskey faints and then I added some sodium carbonate. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos on doing a neutral spirit, when you add sodium carbonate, you can also use sodium bicarbonate, it just takes longer. When you add sodium carbonate to a low wine, it strips out the flavors. And it has a tendency to compress the tails, so you end up having more hearts, or at least it tastes that way. Just kind of cleans up the whole thing. Only do it on stuff that's going to eventually be used for neutral spirits. So when I mixed all that in, I noticed it was having a hard time dissolving. And sometimes that'll happen if the proof is too high, because this stuff dissolves easier in water than it does in ethanol. So if that happens and you mix it in and it's not dissolving, just add like a quart or 2 quarts of water until it starts breaking down and dissolving and going clear. So I treated mine right before bed last night. Then I just let it sit, went to work, did my thing, came home, and what I have is this. Now this was crystal clear faints when I went to work, and it is now this strange brown color, this browny, yellowy, kind of pissy color. And the only thing I can think is that the sodium carbonate has forced an oxidation reaction with something that was in these faints and made it turn kind of pissy yellow. I ended up having to add like 2 or 3 quarts of water to this to get it to dissolve because my proof was a little too high. So I ended up having a full gallon plus another 24 ounces. It was faints from my red, white, and bourbon recipe and my apple whiskey recipe. So it had some distinct flavors to it. Apples and grain. It's not completely neutral on the aroma, but it's a whole lot cleaner. You can still pick up a little bit of a spicy thing and a little touch of fruit or a sweetness, kind of a fruity aroma, but really, really vague and faint. Tastes like nothing. My recommendation is to always do the sodium carbonate treatment when your plan is to make neutral. You know, do your stripping run, treat it, and then let it sit, and then do your spirit run. If you're using sodium carbonate, you really only have to wait about an hour for it to react. Just stir it up a few times. If you're using sodium bicarbonate, you have to use about 3 times as much, and it has to sit at least 24 hours. So if you are planning on treating your low wines with some sodium carbonate, it is 1 teaspoon per liter. And I believe if it's sodium bicarbonate, it's a tablespoon per liter. But so now this is done and it's treated, and I just have to send it to the liquor fairy to run through the little baby still to clean it up and increase the proof. I got to turn the camera off so I can go take all my clothes off in the backyard and dance around the light of the moon to call the liquor fairy, summon them. I mean, most of that I just do for fun, but you know, because like I could just text him. All right, let's get going. All right, so I went out into the woods nearby my house and I got some more pine needles. So you don't need a ton, just a decent sized handful, because we're not going to use this to ferment to make the wash or anything like we did in the pine needle moonshine video. We're just going to use these to macerate in our neutral spirit. And the liquor fairy brought me back. This is about 24 ounces, or I don't know, like 600 or 700 mils of 80%, fairly neutral. Yeah, there's really nothing going on in there, but we're basically going to add it to this. So this is about 40%, about 700 mils, and like I said, this is closer to 82. Now the recipe that I usually do for gin calls for 95% neutral, and the ingredient list is based on per liter of 95% neutral. I don't have 95% neutral, so what I'm going to do is add this 80% to this 40%, so that'll make it, you know, roughly about 60%. I'm going to let it sit, instead of 12 hours, I'm going to let it sit an entire 24 hours to pull as much flavor out of our dry botanicals as possible. Now I'm going to put the recipe for the dry botanicals down in the video description, and their amounts and everything, so you don't have to worry about that. And that actually brings me to today's sponsor, Olive Nation. So they provided several of the spices that we need. We got some fantastic, super flavorful cinnamon and some black peppercorns, some telecherry peppercorns. And one of the things about Olive Nation is they have tons and tons of different spices, tons and tons of different extracts, so you can pick and choose a lot of different things that you're going to use for your experiments or for baking or whatever they were originally designed for. They've also got lots of cool candies and sugars and things like that that you can experiment with. But sometimes you're just in the mood for a snack. And I was cruising around on the website and I found some snacks. These are basically bar snacks. This one's called 19th Hole. This one's honey roasted mix. This one is their Cajun hot mix. As you can see, I've already damn near emptied the bag. So if you want to try any of these, definitely go to the website. I'm going to put the link down in the video description, and make sure you use this coupon code so you can get a big fat discount on anything that you buy. But this is a perfect example of all the different kind of weird stuff you can find on their site that you can probably make use of. Like I said, they've got candies, they've got weird sugars, they've got crazy extracts, all kinds of different stuff that can really help you out in your projects. So definitely check out the entire website. I think you're going to find some stuff that you need. Okay, so let's get going on putting together our maceration. All right, so we're just gonna let those botanicals sit in the pot for about 24 hours. And then tomorrow we're going to zest some lemons and limes. And then technically, theoretically, hypothetically, we could pack that zest into the column using some steel wool to make sure that we have airflow so that we don't actually end up with a plug. You wanna kind of roll it all up like a little sausage and then jam it inside the column. This is kind of a cheap gin basket for those of you who, like me, don't have a gin basket. The Liquor Fairy has tried it before and it worked great. So yeah, the main thing is to make sure that when you get everything packed in there, that you blow through the column to make sure that air flows easily. You don't ever want to have a restricted airflow, because if you do, things could settle while you're in the middle of a distillation run, and then you don't want that to happen. So be very, very careful. If you do feel like it's too tight, just rip everything out and start again. You don't ever want to risk having an impaction in your colon or in your column. Words to live by for anybody over 50. I think I may add some more neutral to this, and increase my ingredients. I think it's going to be delicious, and I'd like to have a big jar rather than a little baby jar. All right, so I'm going to check back with you tomorrow, and we'll see what this looks like and what it smells like. All right, so as you can see from the picture I'm going to put up here, the spirit has gotten completely infused with all of the botanicals. And I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I got a little behind in some other stuff, so that sat for 2 whole days. It smells great, but it may end up being really, really strong with the botanicals. I don't know. We're gonna find out. So we just strain that off and get it into your boiler. And I had to proof it down. Mine was about 65% ABV, so I proofed it down to 40. And now I'm just gonna get the column ready for the liquor fairy, so I can send it all off to the liquor fairy and have them hypothetically turn it into gin or pseudo gin. So now all we got to do is prepare our aromatics that are going to be infused instead of macerated. So all the hard botanicals were macerated, and we're going to infuse our citrus. And because this is such a small run, I'm just going to do about the zest from half a lemon and 1 whole tiny little baby lime. I'm going to use my microplane. I'm going to put a link for one of these down in the video description. These are super great if you cook, or just if you need a lot of zest for some of the other projects that we happen to do in this hobby. This thing comes in real handy because it takes only the outside zest off and leaves all the pith, the bitterness behind. So you're just gonna take the zest off of that whole lime and half a lemon. I'm gonna recommend this per gallon of spirit because I think too much more than that and you end up getting too many of the volatile oils in your product, and you have a much higher chance of luching. You can absolutely play around with the amounts. Just keep in mind, the more oils that you have going through that vapor path, the more it's going to pick it up and potentially end up with a product that's going to be milky at regular drinking strength. All right, so now we just have to send everything off to the liquor fairy so that they can do their magic, and I will see you when that is done. So, time travel. Don't judge me. It's just quality control. This one's good. Oh, I gotta try this one again. Olive Nation. She's thirsty. That's what happens when you film in your kitchen. Having a support system like that who is tolerant of what I do reminds me I need to thank all of my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much. All these folks right down here and anybody that's not listed who is on my Patreon page. Thank you guys so much for always having great ideas and weighing in with some really good suggestions constantly. You guys are keeping my lights on. Thank you so much. Okay, so in the jar, the liquor fairy brought me, right about 700 mils of 80 proof pseudo gin. I've got that watered down to about 40% ABV so that we can give that a try. Also, I have something else that I did with the pseudo gin. So probably 6 months ago, when I initially made the first video about pine needle moonshine, I took a whole shit ton of pine needles, I stuck them in a jar with sugar and water, and I made this, can you even see it in there? This simple syrup. It's kind of ugly, but it smells absolutely amazing, and I think I just got sugar syrup all over the floor. So this stuff smells amazing. It's earthy, it's kind of citrusy, but kind of fruity. It's really difficult to describe. When you make the pine needle soda with pine needles, 5 tablespoons of sugar, and water filled up to the top, if you don't remember from my previous video, let it ferment 3 or 4 days. When you drink it, it's not piney at all. They call it pine needle Sprite because it tastes like Sprite, just lemony and limey and a tiny bit earthy. And that's what I wanted in a final product, but as we know with distilling, very often you don't get what you thought you were going to from what was going in. So I wanted to find a way to add back that flavor that I got from the pine needle Sprite because it was so delicious. So let's try the plain pseudo gin, the pine needle gin. It's got an earthy aroma, little bit of pine, kind of a juniper-y kind of thing. Some of the other botanicals in there. Really tiny bit of citrus. I think maybe I should have gone a little heavier on the citrus because it's really not very pronounced. That's really good. Super soft mouthfeel. Like super clean, but it has those kind of spiky gin botanicals that come after the alcohol kind of washes across your tongue. You get a lot of the flavor on the retro nasal. I mean, to someone who is a consummate gin drinker or a gin aficionado, they probably would say that's not gin. It tastes kind of like gin, but it's not gin. But to me, to my dumb taste buds, this tastes like gin. So I think pseudo gin is an accurate moniker. I think we can keep that. It's even got a little implied sweetness in there, which is awesome. Okay, so this other thing is exactly the same. It's the pseudo gin proof down to 40%, and then I put in about a teaspoon of the pine needle syrup. That's pretty fucking good. So the citrus is kind of like bumped up. There's, of course, the sugar, the sweetness. It's not candy sweet or anything. I didn't put that much in there. That's pretty damn good. I think that'd make an amazing cocktail. And I'd keep it simple, like a gin and tonic or a gin and club soda. I think twist a lime, some of the syrup, the gin, your tonic or your club soda, and I think you'd end up with something pretty special. Now, you wouldn't want to go too heavy with the syrup, of course, but, you know, like a teaspoon per glass, and you're going to get that sweetness, but also an increase in the flavor. And I think combining it with an extra boost of citrus would give you something really special. Yeah, that's kind of delicious. I mean, not that you have to, but if you want to, you can make gin without, or you can make a gin-like product. Let's be more accurate so that I don't get a lot of hate in the comments. You can make a gin-like product with pine needles if you don't have juniper or just don't like juniper, which, if not, why are you making gin? So I think these two things combined, the spirit, I'd call that a success. It absolutely tastes like what I thought it was going to. And then the pine needle syrup, that's pretty darn tasty. I like to use situations like this to demonstrate the fact that this hobby is eminently adaptable for whatever you want to do. There's a whole planet worth of ingredients that people have been using to make alcohol for centuries. So my point is, play around, do some weird experiments. If you don't know if something's going to work, do a small test batch or go on one of the different distilling forums and ask. If you learned anything, if you got anything out of my content that you enjoyed, please do me a favor and hit the like button because it really helps out the channel. It tells YouTube that you enjoy this kind of content, and maybe, possibly, their algorithm will go and recommend it to other people that may possibly perhaps enjoy this content too. So if you have any questions, comments, or experiences with other weird ingredients, post them down in the comments below. I love looking at what you guys are doing and answering questions. And if you want to see what I'm going to do next time, then hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon right next to it, because I got some stuff going on this year. My buddy Ken over at Barrel Charwood just sent me 100 pounds of corn. And it's not just any corn, it's Amanda Palmer. And if you don't know anything about Amanda Palmer corn, it is a corn that was specifically designed to make whiskey taste good. I'm just working out my recipe right now. I'm gonna have malted Amanda Palmer and something else, and maybe something else and something else, and maybe one other thing. We'll figure it out together. All right, I'm just jumping in here real quick at the end to say that I went ahead and pulled the trigger and put all of that pine needle syrup into my gin, and then I drank some of it. I don't regret this at all. This is really good. You can play around with the level of sweetness that you want to do. It will cloud up your spirit a little bit, but that's not actually luching. If it was luching, it would be white. This is just because the sugar syrup had a lot of stuff in it, not just the sugar, but all the terpenes and everything from the pine needles. So it's not super pretty, but it is pretty delicious. That's my recommendation. Just go ahead and throw them together, then use this over ice and with maybe some club soda or tonic water or whatever the hell else you want to do. Throw it in a margarita. All right, that's it. Talk at you later.